Hi, my name is Glaze,
And my name is Jazzy.
and welcome to Let's Table That.
Today we have Holly Warwick from Ground News, People Ops Manager.
We talked a lot about people ops as a growth engine, not just a support function, and how fun and messy the different stages of startup stages can be.
Holly got really open with us. She shared some interesting stories, to say the least. And we had a little segment at the end under the table where she had some hot takes for us. So stay tuned for that.
Welcome to the group chat. Holly, can you please introduce yourself? Share us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really excited to be here today with you guys. So I've worked in tech for over a decade now, primarily in like the Kitchener-Waterloo tech scene. I know, folks usually compare us to like the Silicon Valley of Canada or of like Silicon Valley of the States, which is kind of cheesy, but I feel very passionate about the KW tech scene, right? We had BlackBerry, we've had some monsters in town, right? Like Shopify's in town, Fair, some unicorns for sure. So have been at some very small startups over the years, primarily B2B, and this is Ground News is now my first B2C, which is a whole different world that I wasn't expecting. But yeah, I love tech. I think it's like in my blood, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
In terms of your background, tech, would you say that you found yourself to be falling in the tech world when you were in university, high school? Like, did you think you're going to be one of those tech girls?
Yeah, good question. Throughout university, I worked for Conservation Authority. I'm like an outdoors person at heart, and
Oh.
so worked there throughout university. They hired me after graduation, and I was like, I did it. Like, this is my dream job. I'm dealing with like hunting and fishing and like canoeing and stuff, and it was just like so amazing. And then I realized the like bureaucracy and red tape of like a government org, and so like I graduated. I'm full of beans. I want to like change the world, and they were like, pause. Like, we're not changing this thing. We've done it this way for 25 years. Like, there's no way we're going to change stuff now. And so I kind of hit that wall. And then, had a couple stints in like manufacturing HR. And I was like, oh, this is just also not for me. And so ended up meeting a couple founders and kind of like fell into tech. And it's like, okay, this is where I'm definitely supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of people ops as a function, how would you say you've seen it change over the last few years and what really drove that change? I feel like there's been some changes going on.
Totally. I think like when I think back to my like early days, like manufacturing HR, it was like policies and payroll, right? You're just trying to keep people in line. You're getting them paid. I remember when like my first stress would be like people knowing where the emergency exits are in case of a fire, right? And it's so funny to think back to that. And I just think I've evolved in my career as the function has involved. Like people ops has a seat at the table. You know what I mean? Like we're pulling data, we're in board meetings, like we're helping founders make, really expensive people decisions, which I think is so cool.
People ops is becoming that strategic lever and not just a support function.
Yeah, I also think that founders are realizing that like people mistakes can be so expensive. I think there's founders that have like, heard horror stories and maybe not learned that the hard way themselves, but I've also worked with founders who have learned that the hard way. And so it's like I'm the eyes and ears of your business, right? Like I'm not here to help you make like, business decisions or product decisions, right? But it's like we are at the intersection of everything at this point.
I agree. I think it's hard to find some founders that naturally appreciate and understand HR's partnership. And then there are some that really do value it. And it's just a way easier connection for us to be at that table and actually our words be taken into account.
Totally. You're not doing that like education piece. I've been at startups where you have to like fight to prove your worth. And then there's other just like wonderful founders who know exactly what you're about. And you don't have to do that sort of like managing up like education piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because I feel a lot of people when they think of HR, they think of the super traditional HR where it's like you're fired or you can't wear green in the office.
Yep.
But it's so different now, especially people ops as a function. So that's why we
Totally.
love having you here today, educating more people about how it's modernized from before.
Yeah. And I think that, you know what I mean? We've all had our like terrible experiences with HR. Like I've been there for sure. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you close your eyes and picture HR, it's like the frumpiest, most rigid, like middle-aged woman that no one wants to talk about. I say that knowing I will be a middle-aged woman at some point in my life, which is inevitable, but
You won't be frumpy.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Right. I'm always like, if I start wearing like a lanyard around my desk or just like saying no to everything, like someone please take me.
Yeah.
take me
We'll
aside.
tap
But
you on the wrist. It's
yeah,
good.
I think when I meet founders, it's like, hey, what like vision do you have for your culture here? And like, what do you want to build? And I'm here to help you
Mhm.
like create and build that and,
Mhm.
avoid any like legal
Yeah.
stuff along the
I
way.
mean, you talked a lot about people ops having a seat at the table, and I don't think that was the case even like 10 years ago at
Totally.
many organizations. And so there has been quite a shift. Um, yeah, I love that.
I know you have a background in scrappy startups. I think you've had different levels like that you've worked at, like stages, sorry.
Yep.
When would you say is the right time for a startup to invest in a people ops function? I think that's a question founders are always hesitant to. They might delay it.
Yeah, I love this question. I think it's like probably 6 months before you think you actually need it. In my experience, founders wait till something is on fire before they bring you on. And so like I've joined a startup and my first day they're like, "Oh, by the way, like we had a sexual harassment claim. Like, can you jump on that?" And it's like, "Yep, okay." And
Super
so
reactive.
yeah, generally I think that like 20 to 30 mark is probably where you're going to want to start thinking about it. Like you have managers managing managers at that point. And I think at that early stage, it has to be the right type of people ops person that gets it. Um,
When you say 20 to 30
yeah,
people, okay.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like the sweet spot there. And it has to be the person that understands like where the business is at and what it needs. I think that what I've also seen is that people hire that like admin, maybe like office manager first, and they're
Mhm.
like, well, they can just do HR. And it kind of like sits on the corner of their desk and they're not equipped, they're not trained properly. And I've seen that just go so downhill. That is like one of
Hmm.
the biggest culture killers, I think, when that person is just like not equipped to do that. And I think also people hire um maybe someone from like the big leagues, right? Thinking like,
Mhm.
oh, they're gonna come and bring all of their like Shopify experience to my 20-person team. And it's like I think rarely does that work. It has to be someone who truly understands you and wants to be that like business partner for you to grow this company in the way that you want to grow it.
So would you say a mid-senior level person is a good first hire?
I think so. I think junior is a little scary for me. I think, investing in that salary is you're gonna get your returns on it for sure. Because again, I think those junior folks like, can make some pretty big mistakes early on that are gonna
Yeah.
cost you a lot.
What happens when we treat employees like customers or treating people ops like a product? What do you think happens when we shift it that way?
Yeah, I actually really like this. I thought about this a lot. I think that I've always felt this like compelled to treat the employee base as like my customer. I think that's served me really well in my career, and I think that whenever I look for a finance manager as well,
Mhm.
that's also something I look for. Like, you know what I mean? We can't be rigid. I want you to be saying yes to people. And so it's like I think your employees are like your longest term users. Like they onboard, they hit bugs, they get frustrated and they churn. So it's like, why wouldn't we sort of like map out that customer journey, if you will, and make it the best experience possible, right? It's like my husband works in UX. And so I always hear his meetings and like, doing customer interviews and stuff like that. And I think there is like some overlap there. Like, where are your employees getting stuck? Where are they getting frustrated? Like, where do they lose trust? And I think our ultimate goal is to like build these like lifelong users or like advocates for your
Mhm.
company.
Have you worked with a founder where you've had to help them shift that mindset where they kind of just look at employees as employees are just going to be people that are just going to go in, plug numbers, plug and play, leave?
100
How did you go through that?
Yeah, 100%. I think I worked with founders early on that just like lacked that empathy and that connection with people. Like we hire smart people. They can go and work probably wherever they choose. And so it's like let's give them good reasons to be here, right? And I
Mm.
have this like vivid memory right before an acquisition, like staying really late at the office one night and the founder looking at me and being like, we're nothing without our people. And it's like, okay, it's like 2 years of me trying to drill this into your head. And it's like I
Mhm.
watched it happen in real time, right? And so yeah, I think I've learned to be selective with the types of founders that I choose to work with because it's make or break, right? Doesn't matter how good the product is, doesn't matter how much, revenue they have or what their funding is like. If the founders suck, like it sucks.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
Yeah.
you need great people to build the product,
totally.
do the sales, then you can really, the product can't go anywhere,
Yeah.
right?
It's one thing if you have a great founder, you have a great product, but then sometimes it's hard when you feel your team isn't at the same level as you in terms of maybe passion, not always necessarily just skill.
Yep.
So how would you say high growth teams are able to actually scale performance across like different roles, different personalities, different work styles? How do you all come together and really strive?
Yeah, that's a good question. I thought about like motivation a lot this morning as well as I prep for this, and it's like I think that leaders think in some cases that motivation is something that they like do to people, and I feel like, time after time I'm like, "Hey, like we didn't employ robots or like house plants. It's not like they
Mhm.
just need to be plugged in or they need a little sunlight. Like that's not how it works." Like again, we employ smart people that have like opinions and mortgages, right? And so I think the big thing is like removing the friction, right? And I always tell people like friends and people I've worked with across the years, like when you look at a startup, I think you're either like learning or earning. Ideally, it's both. If it's neither, you leave, right? And so I think to me, I always think like, are people learning and earning? Because if so, like I think that's kind of like the ultimate place to be. And I remember talking to a VP years ago that talked about like, kind of like the three legs on the stool. And I think you have to decide what those three legs are and they're your non-negotiables. And so whether it is product or founders or like pay or the people around you, like you pick your three that you don't compromise on. And I think that's how you can kind of, find the people that you're aligned with. And obviously at Ground News, like we're doing things that are changing the world. I don't say that lightly. It's like you can go work at the company that makes the app that tells you what celebrity you look like. And it's like those things are great and fine. And I think they have a place in the world, but it's like, why not get out of bed every day and feel like good about the product that you put out into the world? And so I think particularly with Ground, everyone is so mission and vision driven, which is like step one, right? We can figure out all the other stuff
Yeah, for
later.
sure. And for anybody that isn't maybe so familiar with ground news, can you explain it a little bit, the
For
mission?
sure. Yeah, so it's a news aggregator. We ingest like hundreds of thousands of news articles every day. It's meant to kind of show you your own bias. So I can show you the app on my phone. I find that a
Yeah,
lot
I'm
easier to
curious.
explain.
Yeah.
And so it's like if I look at my dad who like only watches CNN, like he is getting one very specific view of the world and the events. And so we can show us like your bias rating, like how is the political spectrum reporting on some of these stories? Where is your news coming from? Like, is it a trusted source? And so we're not trying to tell people what to think, but kind of giving them the tools to like, you know what I mean, check their own bias and have like a high level of media literacy. So
I like that because our every news feed or what is it called? The page of Instagram or
yep,
TikTok, it's so tailored to you,
so
The
tailored.
and
feeds,
you're
yeah.
just living in your own little bubble
Yep.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it's for me, it's all puppies, and then other times, if
Yeah.
I'm trying to get new mascara, it's makeup, so
Totally. Yeah. I
yeah.
think we live in these like echo chambers, right? And I think when I joined Ground, I was like, yeah, okay, I read the news. Like I think we have a duty to be like informed about the world around us. But and just like hearing the founders talk and even the CS team will share messages when people gift a subscription. And it's like, hey dad, I'm really sorry. Like I stormed out of Thanksgiving dinner because we can't see eye to eye on like Trump or ICE or
Mm.
whatever it is, right? And so to me, that was like the switch where I was like, oh, we're actually doing something here and that feels really cool. So,
Yeah, it's a good time right now with
yeah,
everything going on in the world.
totally.
There's a lot of differing opinions, so yeah, nice.
Going back to performance, what do you think high performance look like in 2026? Can you share some examples?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I was thinking about there's so many managers at Ground News that are probably so sick of hearing me say this, but what I've learned over the years is that the ultimate like high performing startup employee knows how to come in and create their own work and it's the correct work. I think that's a very niche skill. I'm undecided if people like are kind of born with a natural knack for that or they develop it over time. I can't seem to figure that out yet. But I think that, people can come in like guns blazing, right? They're ready to do stuff, but sometimes it's not always the correct stuff. And so again, maybe they take their like Shopify or Airbnb experience and they cram it into like the tiny startup hole and it doesn't work. And so I think objectively, like they know how to prioritize, they can think clearly. They can make good calls with messy info or data. I think that is startup 101. I've learned over the years that like the best people aren't the busiest people, they're the most intentional.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think that A players are A players no matter where they go. That's what I've seen over the years is like this PM is amazing. He or she could go to any company and be awesome. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
I see a
agree.
lot of mistakes with people thinking, oh, I've worked at Shopify, I've worked at Meta. I could take the same playbook, plug it into this small startup, and they will love me.
Yep.
But it won't work the same way
No.
because every company is different,
Totally.
right?
And so
Yeah.
I think it's finding those like bits and pieces from the Shopifys of the world and figuring out
Hmm.
like how they fit maybe a ground news or a smaller startup. And it's always that balance of like building stuff to scale, right? It's like, yes, you can design things for 10 people. I don't want to design them again for a
Hmm.
100. And so it's finding that balance of like,
Yep.
okay, does this work for us now? Will it work for us in like a year? So I don't have to think about this too much again.
Yeah. And I like how you mentioned it's the high performers aren't necessarily the busiest people because that's where the burnout typically
Yep.
comes. And then they're
Hmm.
not performing and the quality's going down and the passion, like there's no innovation there.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that. And so on that note, like high performers, they're happy, they're intentional. What would you say would be the most underrated lever for retention at companies?
Yeah, I think it is manager quality.
Love that.
Like to me, it's
Yes.
like no contest there. It's like
Okay.
I've seen people be underpaid for years. You know what I mean? I've been one of
Yeah.
them. Like I've
Yeah.
been there,
I
you
feel
know?
Hmm.
everyone
Yeah,
has.
Yeah.
totally. Right. So it's like
Yeah.
people will stay underpaid. I think that people will put up with like maybe an unclear career path. Like at startups, sometimes you have to build your own, and some people are totally fine with that, and that's great. I think people will leave because of bad managers. I find so often what happens at startup is like founders are like, "Oh, you're good at your job, so that means you're going to be good at managing other people who do the same job." And it's like that's not always the case. And so I find that middle layer of managers that are usually like pretty fresh, have been with the company for a bit, like those are the most critical. Everything flows through them, and if there's cracks in that, I just people don't tolerate it. I've seen A players stick around through the most chaotic things, like, have the most insane workload of people I've ever met in my whole life. But the second they have a bad manager experience, they're like, I'm out.
Yeah. And it's also I like that because a manager can also really keep a person with such high potential. Because sometimes there could be high performers, but they're not getting recognition. There's no acknowledgement for them. They haven't maybe seen a promotion in a year and a half,
Yep.
2 years.
Yep.
If that manager is at least encouraging them and helping them and giving like just motivation, that will at least help them see
Totally.
the end of the tunnel.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, managers have a huge part to play.
With metrics, what is one people ops metric that you track really well or you think that is really important?
That's a good question. I feel like for me, it's like I've just been at the smallest companies and it's like I've been solo. It's just me. I'm like running around with my head cut off, right? We don't have fancy platforms. Like I've never had
Mhm.
access to, like super robust data. And so I think it's something that I've probably never actually done super well. I have lots of friends at bigger companies that talk about like, pay compression and stuff. And it's like, oh my God, I never thought about like
Yeah.
I don't have time to think about that. And does it make sense to think about that
Super
for
manual too.
30 people too, right? And
Mhm.
so I think, I thought about like what's one thing I wish we could track better. And I think again, to talk about managers more, it's like manager capacity, I think is something that I'd like to look into more. And like beyond just maybe like, how many direct reports they have or how many one-on-ones they have, but it's like how many performance issues are they having on their team? How many conflicts are there? How many are like unfinished, commitments are they holding? And it's like I think that, when they're good managers, they're also spread thin across like other teams and, they're responsible for managing the emotional load of like other people on the team. And so I think manager capacity is really important. I thought a lot about like early attrition. I think that at startups it's tricky like those first 90 days. It's like we could have had two product pivots in those first 90 days. So like am I, you know what I mean? Are we really understanding if people are like a good fit or early on? I think that's something I would like to do a better job of. Yeah, something I thought about like in preparing for this is like, how do I think about people ops when I join a company and I'm explaining it to folks who maybe, have that image in their head of that frumpy middle-aged rigid woman.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the mistakes I learned really early on was just being like best friends with people. I think that, you know what I mean? We've had our experience with HR and I was like, I'm going to change that. I'm going to be everyone's best friend. It doesn't have to be business first. Like I'm going to be people first. And so you make friends with people and you make connections. And then one particular time, someone was like, I'm going to burn this place to the ground. Like And I'm like, oh, I think I have to tell someone that you said that to me, and then they're like, but I thought you were my friend. And it's like, no, but this is my job, right? And so I think I really struggled with like setting some of those boundaries like early on and learned those lessons the hard way. And so when I join a company and I meet with people now, I kind of give them my spiel. Like, there's 3 reasons you're gonna call me. One, you want to vent. Like something's fired you up. You need to get it off your chest. You talk at me for 20 minutes and you feel better. We end the call. 2 is you're looking for my direction on how to solve a particular problem. So you're like, hey, my manager's a jerk, or, this person said this to me, or I'm having conflict here. And I tell you how I think you should go and solve the problem. And the third one is that I go and solve the problem on your behalf. And so I think what has helped me is being really clear with people on which one we're going to do. And so it's like, hey, you know what I mean? I'm a safe space. Tell me all the things. And, we'll talk about what the game plan is. I'll never go and do something without you knowing and agreeing to it unless you tell me you're going to burn the place to the ground. That's probably the only time where I'm like, okay, I'm escalating this no matter what. But it's funny. I think that I've been able to, develop these like deep relationships with people. I think if you called the founders that I've worked for, they'll be like, Holly just like learns things about people. And it's like that's on purpose, right? You build that trust and people tell you things so that you can help solve the problems, right? I'm always like, if we dance around each other, we're never going to get anything done. And I also chat with founders about like, I'm not always going to tell you guys everything that I hear. Some of it's helpful, some of it's not. Um, and I think that has served me really well. I think the other thing that I think about a lot is on a smaller scale, like when it is, under 50 people, I think, I do a lot of like, I call it like little things with big love. And so my example would be like when I was at Empowered, myself and the founder, we dressed up as like Mr. and Mrs. Claus one Christmas and we drove to everyone's house
Oh my gosh.
and
So
bought them like a
fun.
That's so
personalized
cute.
present. And
So
so
fun.
it's like that's something I'm just so proud of. And it's like, yes, people need bonuses, people need career path, but it's like these little things I find just motivate people so much. And so I think you get to do that at small startups, right? I would have an ongoing list of like everyone's favorite treats. And so it's like you have a win, you have a bad day, like I'm sending you your like Oreo McFlurry, you know what I mean? To like, yeah, that's one of my favorite things. I people always are like, are you gonna go join a huge company? And I'm like, I don't know that I don't know that I could. I think that like
Yeah.
scrappy startup, you get to do these like wonderful, beautiful things that don't scale, and it's okay that they don't don't scale, right? I remember a PM going through something and her and I had chatted about like chips one day and she talked about how she like hadn't had this like particular flavor of Miss Vicky's. And so it's like she has a shit day. I Uber Eats her a bag of chips. It's like $11 on the company budget. You know what I mean? But to turn people around like that, I think is really cool.
I agree. And like in terms of your personality, would you say you're a people pleaser with your friends?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, I would struggle between people pleasing a little bit when someone's venting to me,
Yep.
especially when I feel I can make that difference. So, how do you differentiate between not being that people pleaser and still standing your ground as Holly that works at this company?
Yeah, I think it's taken me very conscious like effort to develop that over the years because if you don't set those boundaries, like you're gonna drive yourself crazy. And I remember like I didn't want to make things self-serve because I was like, no, I want everyone to come to me and ask me for these things. So I get this like touch point with them, right? And so maybe there's like a machine learning engineer that I don't really ever talk to that much unless he or she needs something from me, right? And so I remember being like, no, I don't want anything to be self-serve because I want everyone to call me all of the time. And then working for a VP that was like, you can't, Holly, you can't do that. Even if this company stays at 50 people, like you're gonna burn yourself out and you're gonna get frustrated with folks. And I think like when you join early startup, in my experience, you're like the office manager, you're the EA, you're the mom, like you're doing HR, you're payroll, you're recruiting, like you're doing absolutely everything. And as it's evolved, and I think as I've evolved, it's like, no, I'm kind of done doing those things. Not to say that I'm not gonna like not roll up my sleeves and water the plants in the office if I need to, but I think that has also helped me set boundaries to be like, no, like I'm not doing this. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm not the admin assistant anymore. Like please go and figure this. And I think when you give people like an inch, they take a mile
Mhm.
as well. And so yeah. Does that answer your question?
No, that does. And I
Okay.
actually resonate with that because I think if I remember seeing your background correctly, did you have like an EA position?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
same here.
Yeah.
And then I went into like HR first person at a scrappy startup. And I was used to doing little things that probably an HR person wouldn't.
Yep.
And I also had a relationship with the founders, my friend's mom. So I then had to kind of make a line where I was a year in and I
Yep.
wanted to develop more. And I just pretty much was asking her, like going into her office and saying, okay, I think we need to change this stuff because I wanted to be that partnership
Yep.
versus your EA that can do some hiring when you need a new
Sure.
pharmacist or something.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's so funny. I think that I think founders grossly underestimate how complicated people are as well. And so I feel like every founder I've worked with, you hit that maybe like first like demand letter, first kind of thing where you're like, oh, and they're like, this is not what I was expecting. I think that they, you know what I mean? You're early on, you hire your buddies as like your exec team and it's like all good and the vibes are good and it's like you play ping pong and Communitech and Kitchener-Waterloo and it's like everything's great and then you start hiring because you need to and then I think they quickly realize that people are just like so complicated too. But yeah, I think those boundaries are essential at this point. I don't know how I would survive if I didn't have some of those now.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked with a founder who has kept a low performer
Mm.
for much longer than they should have? And how how did you manage that? Can you share a little bit about
Yeah,
your approach?
for sure. That's a great question. I think that it's this balance between you work with founders who are just like so lovely and they're lovely humans. That has been my experience. And so I think that sometimes their like underarching goal is to make everyone as equally happy all of the time. And it's like that's great. That the intent behind that is like so beautiful. I love that so much, but that doesn't work to build and grow your business. And so I think you have to come at them with data. I know like, 2 or 3 startups, we had someone that was underperforming, and it's like, I think it took me 6 months to a year to convince the founder to get rid of this person, but it's like data, right? You gotta show,
Mhm.
like, their impact on the business in a negative way.
Mhm.
And I think, you know what I mean? Good old Brené Brown, but it's like clear is kind, you know what I mean? We're not doing people any favors when we're not clear with them either. So, yeah, have definitely been there before.
In terms of clear is kind, I agree. Do you feel that person didn't have expectations set for them? They didn't have clarity in their role, or no, it wasn't that. It was just not the right mix for them.
Yeah, I feel like for that particular case, like, just not the right mix. I think had big company experience, came in, didn't really
Mm.
understand what was going, and it's like COVID hit, and that was, another layer on top, which was a little crazy. But I think that founders want to see like the best in everyone. You know what I mean? And I think they're so, of course, precious about their startups. This is their baby. They've put their heart and soul into this. And so to believe that someone, isn't also going to put their heart and soul into it, I think is really tough for them as well. And I think they just always assume good intentions, right? And I feel like where I draw the line is where I see founders starting to get maybe like walked on a little bit. And it's like, okay, I need you to just like get a little meaner,
Mhm.
I've said that to founders so many. I just need you to be like just a little meaner.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because it's probably hard for them to look at that person and think of all the effort they put into hiring them, the interviews that
Yep.
they didn't want to do. So it's hard for them to just let go and know that they have to do that again.
Yeah, for sure.
If we look at it the opposite way and we look at founders who um, are looking at when they're interviewing candidates and they need those critical hires, and it's taken them a while to really find that type of candidate. So when you think about logic versus intuition, how much coaching do you need to like work with a founder who's just like not just, oh, I really like the vibes of this person. I
Yep.
think they could work really well with me. They have the same passion as me. They stay up till 12 and they like to text message at 1 a.m.
Yep.
versus like logic or actual competency. Like, have you worked with founders like that on
A
the opposite end?
100%. I think that I worked for a founder a long time ago that his whole metric was like, could I get a beer with this person? That was the
Ah,
only way he would
really?
hire folks. Like, could I just go right now and have a beer with that person? I was like, okay, I believe in some of that a little bit. Like, I love to get
A
beers with
little bit.
people. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's something there for sure. But it's like that can't be the only thing that we're doing. And I think when I was at Empowered, Thomas, the CEO, hired me on, I think at 10 or 11 people. I had met him in the building of Communitech, which is like our incubator. It's like similar to Mars.
Hmm.
And I remember running into him and being like, "Oh, have you thought of this? Are you guys doing this? Like, you guys just raised your seed round." Like, and I think I scared him into hiring me, which was really cool. But yeah, some intuition hires where he was just so self aware. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like my gut is not correct on these people. And so I need you to help me. And it's like you try to hone in, like, okay, like again, to my point earlier about like, crafting what type of like culture and company they want to bring. It's like, pulling those things out to be like, okay, I can work with some of this. But yeah, their intuition on people sometimes is bang on, which is kind of cool to see as well. I've definitely gone to them with like my tail between my legs to be like, you know what you said about that person when you were just spot
Mhm.
on and I didn't see it and you saw it and I'm sorry. But I think some founders realize that their guts just are not correct when it comes to people. Business decisions, strategic stuff, sure, no problem, like let it rip. But with people, I think we love a self-aware
Yeah.
founder.
Self-aware is good because to what you were saying, there's also the other side where they can be so critical and they're looking at too many things. And at the end of the day, you can't hire somebody to have every must-have requirement or
Right.
nice to have requirement as
Yep.
well. You need to be prepared to train them a little bit, upskill a little bit, see the potential, and then introduce them to your culture and your ways of working.
Yeah.
So that's even a beast of its own, is dealing with those hiring managers or the founder itself when they're just so difficult to.
Yeah. And it's like I mean, you guys know, right? Like I always look at like attitude and, lack of ego and things like that because we can't teach those
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. That's innate.
Yeah.
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 How important is performance as a structure when you think about one-on-ones, feedbacks, feedback loops, review loops? How how have you seen the better the structure or
Yeah, that's when I would say, like, I don't know that we've ever nailed like, if someone has nailed performance reviews, I would love to talk to them because it's like, I don't know what you know what I mean? Like, I've done it 30 different ways, and I can't say that one of them has been particularly better than the other. I think one-on-ones are so important, obviously, like, I don't know how many times I'm a broken record, but it's like, guys, it's not a status update. You guys aren't going through your, like, CRM and seeing what deals have closed, like,
Mhm.
we're talking about bigger, chunkier things here, like, please start doing that. I think feedback is tricky, right? I can train folks as much as I want. It's like they're so sick of hearing me talk about like the SBI model, and it's like feedback is hard, right? And I acknowledge that it's not an easy thing to do, but it's like a gift, and we should be giving it to people, right? And so at Empowered, we had like 360 reviews. We were using Lattice. I think it was
Yeah.
way too much infrastructure for the small team. I think some of the nice parts about early days is that you're so close to everyone and their performance that like the founder and I can sit, right? I can pull the comp data and it's like a little bit more art than science at that point. It's not vibes based. We're not just giving people, merit increases based on vibes, but it's like you are so close to these people and their output and their day to day that it's much easier to just sit down in a room and do that for an hour. And so at Ground, yeah, we're using Bamboo, which is great. It's pretty light, pretty like non-threatening, and it's like your upward review, your peer review, like it is 360. It's pretty standard. We're introducing performance indicators for the first time, which I think will be interesting. And again, you have those folks that have like been there, done that, seen the movie before. They know what a performance indicator, and it's like that's what I'm here for, right? I'll hold your hand the whole time. It's gonna be fine. I promise. But we're doing people a disservice when we don't give them like critical feedback.
Agreed. And I think for the performance reviews and the feedback to actually be full circle and improve performance, the employees need to understand why we're doing this. I feel like engagement is such a hard portion to performance reviews.
Yep.
People often dread it. They're like, "Oh, I have a week left until I have to submit it. Let me just do this after work." How would you say you've been able to drive engagement with that or get people to understand why it's going to be beneficial for them at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I can do as many all hands presentations with like my silly little slide decks as I want, but like until they believe it, like you know what I mean? And so I get, yeah, that's a good question. I guess driving home like the value that like this is important. We don't want it to just be a box ticking exercise because then it's just like a huge time suck for everybody, right? And so we do biannual. I know some companies do like quarterly, which I think for a smaller company would probably be better because the lift there would be lighter. But it's like I'm trying to make this as painless as possible. And I think at the end of the day, like we just want to highlight our all stars and make sure that they're well taken care of. And then also like let's identify our underperformers and get them up to speed, right? There's people that I think, maybe are underperforming but great culture fits. Like I have time all day, every day for those folks to get them up to where they need to be. Yeah, tricky question. I don't
No, yeah. How many questions do you guys include? I know that's another thing, is too many is overwhelming.
Yeah, it's really light. So your upward feedback is like, what do you want your manager to like stop, start, continue? Same with peer. What do you think this person should be like stop, starting, continuing? And then for your kind of your self evaluation and your manager's evaluation of you, your downward review, it's just like, what has this person accomplished in the last 6 months that we want to highlight here? And what do you think they need to improve? And how are you going to help them as their manager and improve it? And then we typically like people to shout out like how they've embodied one of our core values. So
Mm.
nothing revolutionary there, but I've seen ones where there's like 30 questions. And we had hired a CTO years ago from BlackBerry. And he was like, this used to be a month long. Like performance reviews were a month of my life where it would take me that long to write all of them. Like if you have a huge team, and he was like, it'd be 50 questions per, like, it's just crazy. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think 4 or 5 is a good sweet
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah.
And then you don't dread it. You can actually put effort into each question.
Yeah.
One question I've really liked in a performance review is, what was your biggest challenge throughout this year or quarter,
Yep.
and how did you grow and develop from it? Because I think a lot of the time it's about, what did you accomplish? What are you doing right? Which is good. You should reflect on that.
Yeah.
But it's also good to reflect on challenges you've had, mistakes you've made, because those are often the biggest lessons learned.
Totally.
So that's one question that I really like in performance reviews.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think the other thing is like, don't just write stuff for the sake of writing it. Like I always tell people, like, you have nothing. I don't want managers making up stuff. I think I've gotten performance reviews before where I'm like, I think you just didn't know what else to say, so you said this. And I don't really accept it as being like the most truthful thing ever. But yeah, we're pretty clear with people. Like if you don't have robust enough feedback for a peer, like don't give it. You're not gonna be penalized. It's fine. I'd rather do that than people just making up fluff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we hate fluff.
Yeah.
Do you think in 2026 or in the near future, the way we give performance at smaller startups would change?
I think it could. I almost think I'd like to see it change. Again, when I think I go back to early Empowered days, like we kind of had it figured out without super big platforms and, processes and stuff like that. Like it kind of seemed to work when we scaled it down. And I think yeah, that's a good question. Again, like if some company is absolutely nailing this and figured it out, like I'd love to hear about it because I don't know that anyone has. And it's funny. I think that when you work with founders early days, it's like that whole thing where they're like, what is Google doing? What is Amazon? And it's like, we're not Google. We're not Amazon. Like we don't have a 30-person comp team. It's just me, guys. So like, let's just dial this down a bit.
Let's go back to life.
Right. But
Come down to earth.
I think oftentimes, like I remember Vidyard is in town in Kitchener-Waterloo. They've
Oh,
been
yeah.
a major player. And I remember learning like, excuse me, like 5 years into their company, they started doing performance reviews. And it's like, not to say that the bar is low and we should be happy that it's low. And it's like, but like these monsters haven't figured it out either. So why should we feel so compelled and stressed to do so when it's like they're just getting to it now? And I'm sure it was fine for them.
Yeah, exactly. You can't copy every single thing that another company is doing that you admire, especially if they're not even, because for Ground and Vidyard, your missions are different, your products are different.
Totally.
So
Exactly.
it works if you do different things.
100%.
Yeah.
And I remember hiring that CTO from BlackBerry, and when it came time to comp stuff, he'd be like, "Well, Black," and I'm like, "You guys probably had a 50-person team at BlackBerry that was solely focused on like comp data and like ranges and stuff like that. Like just it's just me, guys. Like I also have to go run payroll and hire 5 people this afternoon.
Yeah.
So like, can we just?"
It was also a while ago. Like
Yeah,
BlackBerry
totally
is definitely an OG in the game.
for sure.
But you have to realize like there's changes, there's new ways of looking at metrics.
Yes.
So you can't just base off your past glory days.
Yeah, and I think it was cool. Like I think that BlackBerry kind of put Kitchener-Waterloo like on the map in terms of tech. And I think when it exploded in a bad way, right, those really smart people went and started their own companies. And I think that's what we see as like our tech community today. So I do think we've lost some of that with COVID, right? The incubators used to be just like full of people, and now I go in and it's pretty sparse, which is sad. It used to be like a really energetic, thing, and there was founders everywhere, and you were always chatting with people and learning about new stuff. And so I go into Velocity now, which is the incubator that's run by the University of Waterloo. And so it's typically just like kids that look like they haven't slept all night in their sweatpants, like grinding it out, not getting a paycheck. But right, I walk by and I see their things and what they're working on, and it's like, oh, this is cool and like energizing for sure.
If you were to go into a startup and work with a founder and you had to build something for the 10 employees that they had, and you know that he or she is going to be scaling very soon, what is the most important part of the people ops or the employee cycle that you feel like is should be like done ASAP?
That's a good question. It depends on, like, any groundwork that they've laid, right? So it's like I usually come in and it's
They
like
have nothing.
yeah, I do that audit where I'm like, "Okay, do you guys have contracts that aren't, like, written on a piece of paper and, like, signed in blood? Like, what are your employee contracts?" Like, I do the kind of, like, bare minimum, like, "Okay, do we have the policies we need from a legal standpoint?" And so, yeah, I think you do the kinda, like, bare bones of, like, you know, are we legal at this point with some of the things that like that's the boring stuff. I think you get that out of the way. And then for me, it's like those policies, making like the unclear things clear. So like vacation, stuff
Mhm.
like that, where it's like, you know, I worked at a startup where they just had like an out of office Slack channel. So people would be like, I'm going to do this and and it's like, guys, what? I don't need to know what the whole company is. I don't need to know who's getting a haircut at 3:30 today. Like, what are we doing? Right. But it's like some of those things are tough to walk back. So I would say like when I start and I'm the 10th employee, it's a very different experience that when I've started at ground and I'm maybe like the 30th, 35th and there's like some stuff in place. Um yeah, I think you just focus on those like policies where you're writing them not to tell people where the floor is. I hate writing policies that way. You write them for your, 99.9% of people that aren't going to take advantage of it. And so I mean, when I join a startup, I just chat with people, right? Like, what do you like about being here? What do you think people ops like can improve and, kind of take that data and build on it. But I guess yeah, just I guess at Empowered it was different because I built everything from scratch like day 1 because I was number 10. There was nothing, right? And it's like ground had an HR person before me, so like some of it was built and it's like I also find the tough thing to touch on that a little bit more is like when I was at Empowered, I hired everybody. And so I think you build those relationships and that trust early on because it's like I know everything about you before you start. And so when you do start, we already have this relationship. Whereas at Ground, I felt like I was doing cold outreach. I'd be booking coffee chats with people and I'm like, oh frig, I have to like convince you to trust me. Like this is a lot more lift than I'm used to. And I think that was a cool challenge that I experienced. Just kind of starting that from scratch. I don't know if I answered your
That was
question. I
great.
feel like I
That
just
was
keep
great. No,
rambling.
that's good. I was like, "Can she keep going? Please keep going."
We basically have this little segment where it's called under the table, like let's table that, yeah.
Gotcha.
And we just ask a question and it's more juicy than these
Ooh,
questions.
okay.
So we're trying to like a little bit of tea, but
Okay.
mhm,
Yeah, yeah.
without bashing
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So, Holly, just pick one and you can share the question.
Okay. What's an assumption people make about scaling teams that usually backfires? That's a good one.
We'll let you think about
What's
it.
an assumption people make about scaling teams that usually backfires? I guess what I've seen is like putting in too many layers. I think when you start early days, everything is very flat, right? You have a pretty flat org. And I think a lot of founders are like, well, to scale, I need managers managing managers of managers. And it's like that I have seen backfire where it's like, why do all of these people need 2 reports each? Like it gets a little ridiculous. I think that's something I've seen backfire. I can't think of anything else. Like, scaling. I guess I know we've chatted about this a lot, but I think it is bringing in those like massive company processes that don't fit and to feel too like big or heavy for what you actually need.
Can you
Yeah.
think of an example?
Ugh. No,
No worries.
this one's tricky. How would
You
you answer this?
you picked a good one to start it off. Honestly, for me, I think a big assumption that people wrongfully assume is let's take what Google did
Yeah,
to our seed stage company.
The playbook.
I think a
yeah.
lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah, I think even just like I remember at Empowered us pulling like the engineering leveling from Google and just being like, this makes sense. Like, we'll make everyone an
Mm.
L2. And it's like, no, that didn't make sense at all. It didn't like it was that backfired. That's probably a good example where we just like someone got their hands on it and we were like, this, let's not even think about if it's relevant for us. Let's just like mush it together. And some of the devs were like, I don't know that this is really appropriate for where we're at and what we need moving forward. So that's probably a good example.
I like your first answer with the leveling, having too many managers within an org. I feel like when you're just starting out, you don't need to be managing people.
Right.
There's so much that trickles down that ends up, hey, can you do ABC? And then that person goes to the other person and says, oh, actually, can you do XYZ?
Yeah.
There's so much disconnect that you can't function fast enough. If you're a startup, you need to be moving fast.
Totally.
Everybody knows.
And I think also what happens there is that you're often like promoting those managers that are really good. They're typically your all-stars, right? And so I think we give them this like unfair breakdown of like IC work versus managing people where it's like you're the best salesperson. I just want you to go and do that. Like stop managing. Like and I think some of those like, people decisions are hard to walk back. It's hard to give someone 2 reports and then be like, just kidding. Go do your job. We're taking those away from you. But I've seen that time and time again where it's like you lose that critical IC work that they've been doing because the time it takes them to ramp up those people to get to their level and do that IC work is like large.
I totally agree with that. I think that's a main difference too between the corporate and the startup world is when you're trying to go up the corporate ladder, it's often I need to have a team under me. I
Yeah.
need to show that. I need to be able to have leadership and guidance. But then at startups, that's not always the way to level up. It's more so like your quality of work, your contribution,
Yeah.
and being able to focus on that if it is going to take up more time is great to have that opportunity
Yeah.
and not just feel like you have to have a team under you to grow.
Totally. I think that's one thing we're getting right at Ground is like emphasizing that IC track and that manager track are equal. We don't treat them differently. Like if because the worst thing is when you get people to your point who are like, I need to be a manager and they don't have the skill set for it and it doesn't come natural to them. That's my worst nightmare. I remember being in the office like years ago and walking past someone's computer and they had typed in like how to be a good manager.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
God.
oh shit, we're in for it,
You
Um,
actually saw that happen?
yeah. And
Like
so,
real time.
yeah,
Oh my
real
God.
time. And so it's like, I want people to want to manage people for the right reasons. And I think like
Mhm.
98% of being a good leader is being like a well-adjusted human. I think we overcomplicate that. Yeah, you just need managers who want to manage people because it's not for the faint of heart. I feel like when you're working with those new managers, they're my favorite, right? Because they're just like eyes wide open, and I think they're a little naive, and then they have their first people problem, and you're like, yeah, welcome to the club. Like this is what you signed up for, whether you knew it or not. Yeah,
I like that.
Do you want to do another one?
sure. I
Okay.
feel like I bombed. Okay. What's one thing about culture fit that makes you cringe, but you still hear all the time? Hmm. That's a good one. I feel like we've kind of this might be slightly a hot take, but it's like I feel like we've moved away from culture fit and it's like they have to be a culture ad, And I don't
We love that.
Yeah, culture fit feels sameness. We
Yeah.
don't want people to be the same.
Yeah, and I find it as recruiters, it's so easy to go and find that like I could talk to someone for 5 minutes and be like, "Yep, you're going to fit perfectly here." Like, do I think you're going to move the business in the meaningful way or move the needle or like bring in new perspectives? Like, no, but I could tell you in 5 minutes whether I think you're going to like have fun here.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I guess with the culture ad thing.
Think about like values from companies where they're like hustle and grind. or,
Yeah, just like disgusting, right?
Does that make you cringe?
Yeah, people always use that like we're family, and it's like
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
don't want you
another
to be
one.
my family. Like that sounds absolutely horrible. Yeah, it's funny. We launched Ashby as our ATS, and I didn't
Okay.
realize that there was like default questions on the back end, and so we posted like a CS position, and one of the questions was like, why do you want to work at Ground, and just like the AI slop that you get where people have just put in the question to ChatGPT, and so it's like out of 300 responses, like 250 of them are exactly
This
the same word for word.
They probably have the same dashes in
Exactly.
them too.
Yeah, and you're like, come
Oh
on,
my
guys. Like, could
gosh.
you have not just like changed this up a little bit? But then you get really cool ones, which I highlighted in a presentation not that long ago, where people are like, I've been a user of Ground News for years. Like, or I saw you on this YouTube. This is my favorite YouTuber, my content creator, and so like there are some gems in there, which is really cool. But most of it's just slop. And I don't know if you guys are finding this, but we were kind of like in between recruiters. So I was like, okay, I'll jump in. And I find people are using ChatGPT like on the calls.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
It's
absolutely.
unbelievable. I'm like,
All the time.
that was the biggest pause I've ever heard. And now you have this like perfectly crafted answer. But also my thing was like, I'm not asking questions that have a right or wrong answer. I'm asking like, what environment are you the most productive in? Like there is no perfect answer to that question. So just tell me what you feel. Like I just
No,
find they do
yeah.
that pause where they're like, oh, I'm thinking about the words. And then I see their eyes move and I'm like, guys, it's not like I wasn't born yesterday.
Yeah.
Like just you
No,
could say anything
yeah.
to that question. It's not a make or break
Yeah.
question. Just answer it.
I've
you
had the
know?
pause and then the wait, can you repeat the
Oh,
question
yeah.
again?
Yeah.
Because they didn't actually understand what I was asking. And
Yeah.
then it's another pause. One was actually so bad. It was a pause after each question. And I knew at this point, but I was just going to write it out and see how far they'd go. And
Yeah. Wild.
and yeah, I let them just have that.
Yeah.
Recruiting is like a whole other ball game. Like I've had some wild recruiting stories. Like people are just I remember this one particular one. It was like COVID hit. We were trying to hire a salesperson. And so this was the first time we started doing like Zoom interviews, you know? Every other time it was like I would physically bring someone to the office and you go down and you're like, hey, can I get you a coffee? And you have to book a meeting room. And so we'd like move to virtual things. And one guy didn't know he had his camera on and he was clipping his toenails. So his feet were like up on the and I was
That's
like,
bad.
sorry,
Do
but
you
he-
need a moment?
he doesn't know that I can see him, right? So he just keeps I'm just like stunned, right? Oh, I have so many of
Oh my.
I'm sure you guys have tons of horror stories, no?
Not
No?
actually a toe clipping
Okay.
guy.
That's
No,
probably
I
that's
don't.
probably my
I don't
best
have that.
one.
I have
I'm
like
a little jealous of you,
disheveled-
actually, that you have a toe clipping story.
Those are my favorite
Oh,
stories. Just
gosh.
like the most embarrassing things that have ever happened at work. Like I love when people share their like battle wounds or like battle scar
Yeah.
stories. Like just
I feel like I've had candidates that were truly mad at me because of the company I was working for.
Oh,
But they're
interesting.
interviewing for it?
Yeah. Well, or I would call them. And I was like, hey, my name is Glaze. I'm calling from so and so company. And they're like, I don't like what you stand for. Or I would get hate mail, like hate emails.
and
I'm
you're
like,
like,
I'm just the messenger.
I'm not the CEO here.
Do you
Like
want the job or no?
I didn't spin this up myself. Like
yeah. And it would be terrible. Like they would be so mean. And I was like, okay, we'll
Wow.
move on.
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget what it's like to interview people in person when they would come.
I kind of miss that. I like the in person. I think Zoom sometimes, for me at least, I feel that emotional lag.
Yeah, sure.
You know, it's
Yep.
kind of hard to warm up at first. It's like, yeah, how was the day? Like it's kind of it kind of feels like fake sometimes at the beginning because I want to warm them up. I don't want
Yep.
to dive into it. But when you're in
True.
person, it's easy. Like I feel your aura. Like it's
Totally.
just there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think exiting people virtually is much easier. I don't miss the days where you had to like
Yeah.
I think
physically
for
walk
both
someone.
people too.
Yeah. So
even.
you can just
Like,
close your laptop, feel however you need to feel.
yeah,
Like to me
cry,
that's
go
one of the
scream.
better things I think that came out of like the pandemic and remote work. I remember having to like, sit someone in a room and I'd be like, do you want me to go get your stuff? Like you have to leave now. So it's like that uncomfortable piece is gone. But yeah, recruiting is like a whole other I don't envy the people that do it. I just wasn't built for it,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
You're
Yeah.
built for people ops.
Yeah.
We're built for recruiting. Well, Holly, we loved having you on. You've shared so many insights. We loved your background in scrappy startups, your transition from EA to people ops functions. And I think this was great.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much for having me. This was so much
Yeah.
fun.